Tandem Nomads, episode 275. Most solo entrepreneurs would complain how much content demands so much time, and that is not true. I will tell you why today and help you define the right content strategy that works for you, but also how to find 18 content ideas in just 12 minutes. Hello, Nomad Nation. Welcome to Tandem Nomads, the podcast show and entrepreneurship platform where you can find great inspiration and resources to grow a successful portable business that allows you to live your life in your own terms while generating great revenue, making an impact, and having the flexibility you need. This is your host, Amel Deregi. I'm a business and marketing coach and the founder of Tandem Nomads. This episode is part of the Slow Challenge series where I help you with short episodes and resources to make sure that you can slow down in your rhythm but still move forward in your business. I've been sharing with you in this series of episodes all the different ways where you can really slow down but still make sure that you're not completely dropping the ball, and that there are some ways that you can actually be very effective in your business and get results without having to break down, without having to sacrifice your health and your energy, and without having to also sacrifice time with your family or simply taking time to rest and go on holidays and have fun. And today's episode is all about content strategy. And if there is one area in running a portable business that I've heard most complain about is creating content. How much time it takes, how much energy it takes, and how overwhelming it can be. And today I'm here to tell you and prove to you that it doesn't have to be this way. You can create an effective content strategy that works for you without getting overwhelmed. Because having consistent content is really important. You cannot skip this part. There's a lot of important things to do in your business, but this one will be so effective for you. In fact, your content is what will make your clients know you, like you, and trust you. This is how you will nurture the relationship with the clients that you will attract through your marketing strategy. By the way, I have a whole episode about how to choose your marketing strategy and how your content strategy is not your marketing strategy. So in the show notes of this episode, I will link to the previous episode where I talk about that in details. But know that once you have implemented your marketing strategies to get visibility, you need to be able to capture those people who see you, to get them to know you, trust you, and then buy from you. And by the way, your content is what will set you as the go-to expert in your field. So you need to really make sure that you have some way to capture these people, and that way is your content on top of the real person-to-person relationship that I highly recommend you to pursue when you meet people in a conference, for example, when you are interviewed on a podcast and people reach out to you. Take the time to build those person-to-person relationships. This is key and very important. But you might not be able to create a relationship with every single person you attract. And your content is that way to serve. It's that way to give value. It's that way to make people remember you as you're consistent with your content and take action when they're ready to buy from you. So when you're not creating consistent content, this is a huge loss of opportunity to nurture those people and keep them in your world and attract them to your audience. Even if they don't buy from you right away, they will come to you if you're consistent, and if they're still in your ideal clients and are ready to buy from you, they will know how to find you and they will be more ready to buy from you thanks to your content. And I show you how you do that. And again, it does not have to take a ton of time, and it does not have to be overwhelming. There are a few ways that you can tackle this in a way that works for you. So today I'm going to help you design a content strategy that works for you and within the time that you have available. But I will also give you a quick tip to come up with 18 content pieces in just 12 minutes. Isn't that amazing? So before I dive into these topics and share with you my tips, like with every one of these episodes of the Slow Challenge, I have a workbook for you. So these workbooks will not require you a lot of time, especially the first part of this workbook. It could be done in simply 15 minutes. So take the time to go through this workbook. And then the second part is really the process to help you over the time to build your content. So when you sign up to this workbook, you will receive it by email. And if you have not been signed up to the Slow Challenge before, you'll also be added to the Slow Challenge and receive all the information to find all the previous resources of the Slow Challenge. So to find your workbook, go to tandemnomads.com/275. Now, to get started with the topic of content, before even we look at how to create effective content strategy that works for you and how to find the right content for you to be seen as the go-to expert, I think we need to tackle one big mistake that a lot of solo entrepreneurs make is to confuse, first of all, their content with their social media, and second, to think that their marketing and content strategy is all focused on social media. So later in this episode, I'll show you how you will be able to actually create your social media content easily thanks to this process. But just as a summary, know that when you start looking at your content, forget about social media. Just forget about it for now. This social media is just a way to distribute your content. Please don't host all your content only on your social media platform. Make sure to first focus on creating content that will be hosted on your website. This is so key for many reasons, and I have a whole episode about that as well that I will link in the show notes of this episode. But you're really harming yourself by putting all your content on social media and focusing all your efforts on social media instead of hosting your content on your website. Don't depend on other platforms to build your audience. Make sure to educate your audience to go to your website and to find the real content right there. So start with your content strategy as I will guide you today, then develop it and host it on your website, and then you repurpose the content that you created on your website into one or different social media posts so that you can distribute that content and then make people come to your website to consume the full content. Of course, if you only create content on social media that's about sending people outside the platform, those platforms were not going to be happy. So if once in a while you create content where you don't call people to go outside of the content, it's fine. But still take the habit at least once a week. For example, when you have a piece of content, a blog or video or podcast, make sure to give a snippet and send people to your platform to read or listen more. So basically now you know that I'm not going to tell you about how to do your social media. I'm only going to focus on how to create the content that you will be hosting on your website. And most importantly, how to create a content strategy that works for you, the time you have available, and that really provides value and that will help you convert all those efforts into real clients. So the first step to define your content strategy that we go into this workbook is to define your content medium. I've seen some people who would go with blogging and do videos and do podcasting. Usually podcasters would not go and venture everywhere, but still I've seen a lot of people getting overwhelmed for the first reason that they don't pick their content medium. So the first way to make sure that you don't get overwhelmed with your content strategy is to only pick the ideal medium that works for you. If you're comfortable with writing, go with blogging. If you're comfortable with videos, go with videos. If you're comfortable with talking simply and you don't like to have your face on the video, like the reason why I started podcasting initially, then go with podcasting. Choose the medium that works for you. And this is the first step to not get overwhelmed. And then once you do that, the second step is to choose the frequency of your content. So here's the thing. I've seen so many solo entrepreneurs get motivated and ready, said, okay, I'm going to do this. I'm going to start creating content. I'm going to do it regularly. So they stick to it for a while and then they get exhausted and then they give up. But then they eventually come back to it and then they get exhausted and then give up again. And eventually at some point, this person might just give up all for good. Nomad Nation, is that you? Okay, I hope that you're not in that case, but most common is to just simply not be consistent, to create a blog post here and there, to do a podcast episode here and there, or to do video here and there. And that is not effective. What will work is the consistency. But here is the thing. If you don't feel that you have the capacity to blog, do a video or a podcast every single week, you can still choose the frequency that works for you. So ideally is to be able to share your podcast or your blog or your video every single week. But you also can do it every 2 weeks or once a month. Okay, I would not recommend to do further than once a month, because then it's hard to keep people engaged with your content and remember you. Of course, if you really can't at all, then do what you can in terms of frequency, once a quarter maybe, or something like that. But ideally, I would say once a week, every 2 weeks, or once a month. So choose the frequency that truly works for you. Instead of getting disappointed and overwhelmed, just pick the time that works for you. But here's the thing. What you need is not a lot of time. What you need is commitment for this to work. You need to be committed to creating consistent content and serving your client with great value. And you will see, I'll tell you, value is not about quantity. It's about consistency. So be sure that throughout the process, you shift your mindset from, creating content is so much work and time, to creating content is simply me being committed to it and making it work within the time frame and the energy that I have available. If you had to remember only one thing from this episode, is what I just said. So please go back to it and listen to it again if you need to. All right, so we said, first step, define your content medium. Second step, define your frequency. And now the third step is about finding your content topics and the type of insights and tips that will help you serve your clients with what they need and set you as the expert to go to in your field. Also, that content that you're going to create is going to help you to prepare your audience to be ready to buy from you. But I can already hear you, Nomad Nation, wondering, oh my God, what kind of topics should I develop to be able to do that? And how much time is this going to take me? Is that you, Nomad Nation? Well, don't you worry. And I told you and I promised you that I will help you in 12 minutes come up with 18 topics of content that you can develop and content that is strategically developed to be able to convert your audience into great prospects and clients. So I'm not going to list those questions because I've already prepared them for you inside the workbook of this episode. You go to tandemnomads.com/275 and you'll be able to download the workbook where I ask you these questions that will help you develop 18 different topics in 12 minutes. So what you want to do is to set up a 2-minute timer for each one of these questions. And you have 6 questions in total. And a side note here, if by any chance you don't come up with the answers right away, then it probably means that you don't know your ideal client well enough to be able to serve them with the content that will help you reach out to them, really get that trust and their interest in you. So if you struggle to answer those questions very quickly, then make sure to take the time to run some surveys and some interviews with your ideal clients to get to know them better so that you can answer these questions better. Usually this comes when you just started out in business or you're just new at creating content. But in general, if you've been running a business for a while, you should know these answers so quickly that you can answer these questions in 2 minutes max. So either type your answers in the workbook, or you can also use post-it notes to come up with your answers and have one post-it per idea that you can keep. Also, if you have more ideas, feel free. You don't need to stick to 3 answers per question. And then each answer is one piece of content. So once you come up with these ideas, the 4th step is to develop that content and to create it. But here's the thing. Again, this is another place where a lot of you might get stuck because creating and developing that content might take you so much time. But it doesn't have to. And I know that one of the reasons why you might get stuck is because you really want to put out some great content. And that is really respectable. But there's another way to look at this, to not get overwhelmed. That goes back a little bit to the 2nd step that I was talking about regarding consistency. So here's the thing. The value that you provide is not going to be in the quantity of content that you produce. It's going to be in the consistency of it. And the more consistent you are, not only the better you'll be at providing great insights, but also the more trust you will have from your ideal clients, but also the more opportunities you'll create for them to remember you. If you only show up in their feed or their email box once in a while, they're not going to remember you when they need what you have to offer. So consistency is more important than the quantity of insights and the quantity of information that you give. So your content can be very, very short. I have a client, for example, she's a mother and very busy and have a lot going on in her life, but she's committed, as we said, to her business and to creating consistent content. So she puts out a podcast show every single week that's just 5 minutes. So you can do the same, Nomad Nation. You can create videos that are 3 minutes. You can create a podcast that are 5 minutes. You can create a blog which has just a paragraph or 2. By the way, there's a very famous marketing guru out there. His name is Seth Godin. And he creates consistent content every 2 weeks, I believe. And his emails are like sometimes just 5 sentences. His content that leads to the blog is the same, and it's just 5 sentences sometimes. Sometimes it's a bit more, sometimes even less. So the most important here for you to demystify content creation is to understand that you don't have to give a lot of quantity. And by the way, here I need to declare myself guilty of one thing, is that I always struggle to keep things short and simple. And as you notice in the time, if you've been listening to the podcast episode for a while, I've really shortened my podcast episodes. I want to give a lot of information, but I realize that sometimes less is more, and same for you. You can actually make more impact when you give less information. So this is how you keep things simple and avoid getting overwhelmed and allow yourself to still be consistent and serve your ideal clients consistently with great content and great value. Speaking of which, you might ask yourself now, how I'm going to make sure that the content is great and that I am effective at developing the content very quickly. In the 4th step of this workbook that goes with this episode, I take you through the process of reflecting on your content effectively. But it all boils down at simply taking 5 minutes and listing the top 3 to 5 key ideas you want to share for each piece of content. For example, today I had 4 steps that I wanted to share with you and 2 mindset shifts that I want you to have to be able to make great content and be effective at it without getting overwhelmed. So think about it. That's exactly the steps I took to build this content, is to think about these 4 steps and 2 mindset shifts. So think about it in your case. How could that be? What could be those key bullet points that you will use to then develop the content without overthinking it? Remember, less is more, but also Don't try to come up with the perfect content. Great value and great quality does not come from the quantity, but also you will get better at developing even short content that's effective by being consistent and by just going out there with sharing what's good enough. So keep this idea in mind when you develop your content. Is this good enough instead of perfect? Because I know that one of the things that blocks a lot of people is to judge the quality of the content, trying to make the best possible quality and give the best possible value, which is great, but that's not going to serve you, and it's not certainly going to serve your audience. So keep the good enough strategy in mind when you develop your content. And only once you've built this content and uploaded it on your website, no matter which medium you use, then you share it with your list of subscribers for your newsletter. And circling back to the beginning of this episode, only then you take these pieces and share them over social media. And this is why people get overwhelmed with social media, is because they don't know where to start and they think that it's all about being constantly sharing things on social media, when the most important is to think about your content strategy. And once that's done, it's going to be very easy to repurpose all this greatness into great posts. When it's about content strategy, your social media is just about redistributing your content. Now, social media has other roles, such as visibility and creating relationships. That's one thing. But if you're stuck with not knowing what to post, that you know now that you don't need to start with that. Start with this content and then repurpose it for your social media. All right, that is a wrap for today, Nomad Nation. I hope that this episode has helped you demystify what content creation is about, and that this workbook will really help you build content more effectively without wasting time trying to come up with the perfect content and then not doing anything about it. So make sure to download this workbook on tandemnomads.com/275. When you receive it, don't hesitate to respond to that email and give me your feedback. Tell me what you learned and any struggles you had along the way or questions you have. Don't hesitate to reach out. I'd love to be here to support you. I can't wait to meet you there. And then the next episode, stay tuned to turn your challenges into great opportunities.